In this video, I want to talk a little bit about how to move from students' concepts to their visual expression. And before even starting to think about how to visually express a student's idea, I like to get their ideas onto paper through some writing exercises. Now, we have some resources to share with you on questions that you can ask students as they're developing their idea. So this first one is just on topic exploration. Number one says, what topic do you wish to focus on for your sustained investigation? So at this point, hopefully students have an idea of a vague topic that they might want to use as the centerpiece for their concept for their portfolio. Now this can always change and get more specific with time. We have a resource coming up later in this video that offers just a laundry list of various topics that students could look over if they're having trouble choosing one in particular. But once they have that idea down, we like to get more specific. So number two asks, how does this topic relate to you, your lived experience, and your future? I like to ask this question to make sure that students are drawing from their own experience as people to inspire their topic in a very specific way that isn't appropriating an idea from someone else's experience, and also to find their own personal connection to this. I like to clarify to students that this is something they're working on for an entire school year. So if they feel more personally connected to the idea, then they will feel excited about it throughout the entire year. A lot of times when students choose a more vague idea that they don't find a lot of personal connection to, that excitement like wavers across the entire year. The third question asks about a personal story or instance that relates to this topic. I try to be clear that students do not have to share this story with anyone except for themselves. This is just for students to walk through a specific narrative that might inspire one or several pieces in their sustained investigation. I also like to talk about a sustained investigation series kind of like a story that has an arc. So if they're focusing on a specific story that starts off with like a realization of a certain issue and how they navigated through that concept and reached like a conclusion about that issue in their life, this story they answer for number three might like provide a little bit of a narrative arc for them to explore throughout the entire year. The second resource kind of moves on from concept onto visual expression of their idea. So in this resource, we talk a little bit about the 5 key concepts or aesthetics that students wish to express through their series. And in this, I try to ask them what kind of messages they want to communicate to their viewers, what the audience should understand about their topic when they're walking away from their artwork, as well as some primary emotions that might be prevalent throughout their pieces. When students are answering these questions, I also ask them to think about what kind of art style they might want to include in their sustained investigation series. So each kind of art style, whether it's realism or surrealism or expressionism, they all convey a different kind of emotional impact through the artwork. So that's a really important part of how they want to convey that message, and they're allowed to list that in here. I asked for 5, and I also remind students that they're making 15 pieces for the sustained investigation, or at least uploading 15 images. So it might expand past just the 5 that they list here, but it's a good starting off point for students. So the next resource that we have provided are on brainstorming a few patterns that students can use throughout their sustained investigation piece. So this resource just has like 9 squares for students to fill with patterns or shapes that might be relevant to their sustained investigation concept. I ask students to think about how their concept might be relayed through a pattern, whether it's through a furniture design that they've lived with all throughout their life, or through some kind of like organizational symbol that is internationally known to represent a certain concept or thing that could be interlaced into their sustained investigation to convey a certain idea. So in this space, they can practice drawing that pattern out in different ways just to see what it looks like, and also have kind of an arsenal of different patterns that they can always utilize in the future. If they feel like their piece feels a little bit empty, they can choose one of the patterns that were brainstormed in this worksheet and implement them into any piece in the future too. As time goes on, I want students to slowly start taking this visual exploration and then start applying them into their artwork. So this next resource is called Places and Things, and it asks really specific questions about how students can take ideas that are on paper and make them into actual pieces of artwork they can include in their sustained investigation. So this prompt asks students to think about a particular location that's pertinent to their topic. For example, if their topic is about nostalgia and childhood, a location they might choose is their elementary school or a space that they found a lot of safety in when they were younger, to play or to learn. I include an exercise in here for them to make an artwork that's influenced by that space. So I ask them to travel there and photograph it if it's somewhere that's accessible to them right now. And I also ask them to play around with their photography of the space. For example, walking across the street and taking a picture of it from afar, or taking a picture of how people interact with the space in different ways with their permission, as well as taking some close-up textures and patterns of the space. For example, the brick that's outside, or I remember a student did choose a school that had a mosaic on the outside wall, and she had taken some beautiful pictures that were close up of all the broken up pieces of tile that ended up being a big part of her sustained investigation in the future too. On the bottom here, I have a second exercise that's similar, where students are choosing 5 objects around their home that are pertinent to their topic in a specific way. For example, this year I have a student who's thinking a lot about recipes that are passed down through generations in her family. So the 5 objects that she chose were a lot of things that were around her kitchen space that she could use. And I asked them to arrange those objects around a room and photograph them again in a few different ways. So if they're organized by size or organized by color, or just interacting with the space in a really natural way. And that way you can think a lot about how composition affects the story or meaning that's coming across a photo. Because for certain students, like this student, having the objects kind of scattered around the kitchen, mid-use while they're cooking something, made a lot more sense than, for example, organizing each of those objects by size, which wasn't necessarily conveying the story of family and cooking and community building in the kitchen. So at the beginning of the year, students are answering these questions, maybe 1 question a week, while they're starting to build up their sustained investigation idea. And in the meantime, in class, we're actually focusing a little bit more on technique practice, which I'm going to talk about in the next video.